Here's the big challenge of life. You can have more than you've got because you can become more than you are. That's the challenge. And of course, the other side of the coin reads, unless you change how you are, you'll always have what you got. I have found in my experience that income does not far exceed personal development. Now, sometimes income takes a lucky jump, but sure enough, unless you grow out where it is, it'll usually come back where you are. Life has strange ways. If somebody hands you $1 million, best you become a millionaire quickly, so you get to keep the money. Otherwise, sure enough, it'll disappear. Somebody once said, if you took all the money in the world, divided it up equally among everybody, it would soon all be back in the same pockets. Incredible. Success is something you attract, not something you pursue. Success is looking for a good place to stay. So instead of going after it, you work on yourself. Personal development. See, the major question to ask on the job is not what are you getting? The major question to ask on the job is, what are you becoming? See, the big question is not what am I getting paid here? The big question is, what am I becoming here? Because true happiness is not contained in what you get. Happiness is contained in what you become. So that's our major subject for tonight, personal development. Of all the assignments Mr. Shoaff gave me at age 25, this was probably the most difficult. In fact, I'm still working on this one. I think it's an unending challenge to see what you can become. The next subject is called Basic Laws. And it's good to study the basics. And I call these basics primarily because they come from the Bible. Now, I'm not a theologian or a minister, and that'll be apparent. But Mr. Shoaff taught me that the Bible was a good textbook for ideas and stories and success equations, how to live the better life. I found out that was true. He also taught me that the Bible is as practical as it is spiritual, and I found out that's true. If you look at your bank account and your income and you're not happy, there are several places in the Bible to check to see what the heck's wrong so you can make the changes. And we're going to cover some of those tonight called basics. Okay. The next subject is my favorite, setting goals. Mr. Shoaff taught me how to set goals. What a favor that was. One morning at breakfast, shortly after I met him, he said, Jim, let me see your current list of goals, and let's go over them and talk about them. He said, maybe that's the best way I can help you get a better direction started. And I said, I don't have a list. He said, well, is it out in the car or home somewhere? I said, no, sir. I don't have a list anywhere. He said, well, young man, that's where we got to start. He said, I can tell you right now, if you don't have a list of your goals with you, he said, I can guess your bank balance within a few $100s, which he did. And that got my attention. I said, you mean my bank balance would change if I had a list of goals? He said, drastically. That day, I became a willing student how to set goals. And sure enough, learning how to set goals changed my life. And I often wondered why no one had ever taught me how to set goals up until age 25. I went to high school, but if they offered it, I missed it. I went to college for a year, never heard it. I worked for Sears. Really. And to my knowledge, Sears never taught it, right? How to set goals. So here I am, age 25, married, my family's starting, I've been to college, I'm working, and I still don't know how to set goals. But fortunately, when I was 25, I met the man who taught me how, and it revolutionized my whole life. Economically, socially, personally, it's incredible. So I want to share with you tonight what Mr. Shoaff shared with me, how to set goals. It can be a life changer. Okay. The next subject is the negative part of the seminar. Life is part negative, so we got to talk about the negative. And this subject is called diseases of attitude. Diseases of attitude. There's a lot of things that can wreck your chances to do well. We live in a rather dangerous world, so you got to be not only wise, you got to be careful. Now, attitude diseases are just as bad as physical diseases, right? High blood pressure, heart trouble. I mean, a lot of things lace your chances to do well. So you've got to be careful. And attitude diseases are deadly. I mean, they'll destroy all the good things you start. Okay? So we'll go through those attitude diseases, how to spot them, how to look for them, what they are, and the cure. And I'm a pro on these because I've had them all, so I can give you excellent advice on these. Now, the last subject we're going to consider tonight is called the day that turns your life around. The day that turns your life around. And under this subject, we're going to talk about the emotions that can change your life. Human beings are emotional creatures, and emotions are powerful for life change. Now, of course, emotions are so powerful, they can go either way on you. Emotions can either build or destroy. So you really have to employ emotions properly. We call civilization the intelligent management of human emotions. If you can intelligently apply your emotions in the right direction, no telling what can happen. Could turn your life around one day would be sufficient. So we'll talk about those. Okay. Now that's a lot to cover in one evening, but we'll keep at it here and see if we can't get it all done. I'd like to have you now jot down the theme of the seminar. Every seminar should have a theme, I guess. We've got one. It's on some of our literature if you happen to notice it, but if you didn't, for your notes, here it is. The theme of the seminar goes like this: the major key to your better future is you. That's the theme of our seminar tonight. The major key to your better future is you. And I'd like to have you underline two words just to give it some added punch. Underline the word major and the word you, so that it reads, the major key to your better future is you. Now, my first suggestion is transfer this to a card or something where you can put it up, where you can see it every day. Preferably put it up where you can see it at the beginning of the day. Before you go off to put the day together, this is a good phrase just to glance at, to keep in mind as you're putting the day together. It's called the silent seminar. If you'll just let this talk to you during the day, I found it to be tremendously helpful. The major key to your better future is you. For a big share of my life now, I didn't have this one quite figured out. Among a lot of things I didn't have quite figured out. Many things used to puzzle me back in those early days. I used to wonder why two people could work for the same company, one make twice as much money. Now, see, that used to puzzle me. And maybe they were the same age, graduated from the same school, live in the same community, work for the same company, with the same products and the same services. They've got the same traffic, the same problems, and one makes $1,000 a month, the other one makes $2,000 a month.
All right, so good evening, everyone.
Why would this long list be the same and the money twice as much?
If you're able to hear me, if the audio is coming through clearly, I'd simply ask you guys to just hit a 1 in the chat box and let me know that you're all hearing me fine.
What's the difference? Why would one person do twice as well, 3 times as well? Speaking economically. Now, I know there's more than one way to do well. I understand that.
All right. Okay, Lee. All right, then that's nice. Okay, so welcome again to another live market scan, and we pretty much, these sessions are meant to take a look at the market to try to come up with an outlook for the remainder of the week and going into next week as well, right? When we do these scans, we generally assess just the major pairs. In terms of Euro USD, the pound in relation to the USD, the Aussie, Kiwi, the Japanese yen, and we also have a look at gold as well, and the Swiss franc. All right, so we pretty much cover all the major crosses with the USD. Right, the aim of these sessions is to give you guys a guideline in terms of target levels to look for as you go through your trading week. We try to assess the market, see where we are, and to see where the likely movement of the market would take us. Now, we don't provide entry points or anything. Based on your own trading style and your own trading strategy, each person should have a list of setups or a list of conditions that they would need from the market in order for them to take a trade, right? So based on your own trading style and your own trading strategies, then you can simply apply that and execute your position to take advantage of these opportunities, right? So without further ado, let's get started. Now, we did not do a session last Wednesday. So what I'll simply be doing now is to start fresh, because the market would have moved on over 2 weeks, right, before we got a chance to really analyze anything at all from it. So what we're simply doing now is to do a quick review of the entire market in itself, right? And then from there, we can call the levels or to provide target areas. Now, generally, whenever I'm doing my analysis, I would start from the monthly time frame. But in this case, we're looking at Euro USD, and I'm pretty much have an idea as to what the monthly time frame would look like, right? But let's start there anyway. And immediately, I just simply tap in 2 levels, my highs and the lows out of the market. And from there, on a weekly time frame, it's clear that we can see that the market is pretty much in a smooth downtrend, and we're just in and around the weekly anchor as well for the market. Right, so the target level for Euro USD should be looking towards support here. Let's just make this a little bit brighter. Right, so this is where we should be looking for Euro USD to at least make an attempt of these lows. Right, there's also a gap in the market right in this area. And anytime you find gaps in the market like this, you generally find there's an imbalance in the market. These gaps are imbalances in the market. And there's why I say they're imbalances, there's no price action in this entire zone. So in April 2017, the market simply made a jump, and it created a gap there. And whenever you find these gaps, it doesn't matter how long it takes, price must find back its way to cancel out this imbalance in the market. So from what I'm seeing here, I would be holding, based on the fact that we're pretty much close to this area, I would be holding a short bias on Euro USD to come in and find price acceptance in this area before breaking out of its downtrend and continuing upwards. On the daily time frame, you can also see where the market is also rejecting its trend anchor, which is also a key resistance level as well. What you would simply be looking at out of the market now is any form of price movement in this area. Let's just throw this in. Okay, so the level that you want to see pricing at this stage is you want to analyze price action as it approaches this overall zone. A break and a close beneath the 1115 zone, then you can have a pretty clear path all the way down into support. And this is monthly support that we're looking at. But your first target point could be anywhere in these levels, which is 0.0995. In terms of your entry area out of the market, based on where we are now, okay, as I just mentioned on the weekly time frame where you find the gap, if you look at the 4-hour time frame as well, you found the gap here as well. And once you see these things in the market, you generally find what? Price find back its way to complete this imbalance before moving in its original direction. And you can see the market was what? Pretty much in an uptrend from before. We had bullish pressure coming in the market. The market simply gapped higher. We came back in, consolidated within this zone to give you price acceptance in this area, and then continued higher. What you'll be looking at out of this market now is look to see the price approach in these areas. So you'd look for the market to simply come up back in this zone before moving lower. So I'd anticipate price to push here in this area, and then from there we could take price lower. Right? So what you would be your target level for Euro USD should be 0.995. So that's the level that you would want to be looking at throughout the remainder of this week, moving into next week. That's what you would pretty much be looking at for Euro USD. Right, so let's just highlight it properly. This is the zone that you want to watch. Highs in terms of resistance, and this is your support zone. A break and a close beneath this level should take price all the way back down here. But at the moment, this area becomes your key area to watch for price at this stage. Pound USD, pretty much the same again. We saw this large movement to the upside out of the market with pound based on the election that just took place and the Conservative Party with that comprehensive win, right? So what you can immediately see now out of the pound, I'm not sure how many of you guys know the Elliott Waves analysis or pretty much study the Elliott Waves analysis. But what we can see here is that at this point, the market pretty much completed its fifth wave, right, of the first leg out of the overall bullish run from the market. So on the monthly time frame, we see the market is pretty much coming out of its downtrend, and you can identify that movement out of the market simply by this double bottom here on the monthly time frame. What you'd be targeting ultimately from the monthly is for the price in itself to approach the 139 zone, 140 level. And this, you should be looking for that in early parts of 2020. That's where we should be looking in terms of price action out of the market. Right, so in terms of your levels, you can identify this area and just in and around that level. Last month's low would be your target area in terms of support. From there, and you take it to the weekly time frame, you can see that the market is pretty much trying to find back its way to close the gap on its 21 period moving average. Your first target point would be right back in weekly support, which is 129. So that's the level that you'll be looking at. But this too still has some movement to the upside. So I wouldn't really be looking to sell this market just as yet. I'd want to see some other plays to the upside out of the market, possibly to touch back into these highs. And then from there, I'll be looking for shorts out of the market. Based on where we are now, again, probably wouldn't be looking all the way up there. I would possibly look to see the market just to come back in and touch this level. Let's just see exactly where that is. Right, and that's not bad. That's smack on your 38 in terms of your Fibonacci retracement. That's a 38.2. So that's the first area that I would actually be targeting for a retracement. And then from there, I would be looking for the market to make its way back down in the 130 zone. I still expect a lot of sideways movements out of the market, but ultimately, I would want to see some price action back in the 132 before making any form of movement to the downside. Ultimately, I would be holding this trade right back down in the 128 zone. That's a level, that price, that I would be comfortable seeing the price before holding on to any long-term buys out of the market. Right? So this, but at first, this is your first target level, which is the 129 zone. Look for your entries in and around this overall area. That zone becomes your target, your selling point out of the market. And this is what you'll be looking at for euro, for pound USD. USD CAD, as you guys can see, again, I was actually targeting higher prices out of the market based on the last time we did the scan. Price pushed a bit higher, but ultimately we saw considerable weakness out of the US dollar simply based on the meetings, the meeting minutes from the Fed Chair Powell after they held on to interest rates in the last call. The Fed interest rate was what, 1.75 last week, and we saw the market pretty much didn't move, reacted too well on that news. And based on the minutes from the meeting, investors kind of saw where they were holding back a bit, and the dollar isn't as strong as they would want it to seem. So investors took that as pretty much a bad news, and you saw where the dollar pretty much fell off from that point after that whole news report last week. Right, so let's just clear up this a bit. And start first just the same. And we're back in the 131 zone, target level. Would love to see what price does as it approach 130. This level has always been a very important or very interesting level for price every time the market hits around the 130 zone. It's seemed to be an era where price is heavily accepted. And we look likely to be heading back in that zone. Yep. All I would be looking at from this is just finding entries in and around this area to take the market back down into support zone here, back down into the 130. Level that you want to watch though is right here, or exactly where price is at this time. This is also a very interesting level, 131 in and around that area. So if you should get rejection out of this market, any close above this little area right here, I wouldn't even put it as high as this resistance zone of 131.85. And so let me just make sure, 31.37. Put that at 131.30. If you find even price pushing higher than this point, look to see the market test these areas. So I wouldn't even watch this support zone, this resistance zone here. This is the level that you want to be looking at this current stage. This is the level, definitely the level that you want to be looking at. So if price push above this zone, look to see the market attempt back higher. 31.30 is the level that you want to be looking at. However, you should be your target area should be back in your 30s, $30. That's the level that you should be looking at out of the market. May find some slight movements back to the upside here before coming down, but you want to look for price to come into this area, and then from here you can look to see the market push here. This is what you should be looking at out of the market, right? And again, you should have your entries setups and your requirements that you will be looking at, whether you trade candlesticks, whether you trade patterns, breakouts, reversal, whatever structure that you trade, and the conditions that you will be looking for out of the market. Please make sure that they are all respected before you enter any form of trade. All right, but that is what we'll be looking at for USD CAD to target 130, and then from 130 we can look back for the market to head up into the 132 zone. For USD JPY, now as you can see, the market pretty much worked out superbly based on the analysis that we did from, this was what, about 2 weeks ago. We look at this and we were saying that we want to see further movements out of the market into this zone, and then from here we would be targeting where? The 109.60 or the 109.70. That's the area that we'll be targeting, and immediately we got price in this area. Now, the fact that Euro USD JPY is one of the pairs that I trade on a daily basis, I wouldn't go too far in terms of eliminating or clearing the chart in itself, but I would tell you from now that the area that you want to be watching is your 109 zone. So you want to be looking at this level here, and then from here you can look for the market to make an attempt at the 111. Right? This is your target area. And why am I saying that again? You can find another gap in the market, another imbalance in the market. Price action simply needs to find its way in these areas to fill it out. And especially we're what? Pretty close to where price is, to where that gap is. Price action is pretty close to where that gap is. So that's what we would ultimately be looking at. So the target area now becomes that 111 mark. And I'll just highlight it with this. So that's a level that you ultimately want to be looking at. However, to get up into that zone, you want to find price back in these little areas right here. Need to see some form of retracement out of the market especially after that impressive run that the market did over the past 2 weeks. So from here, and my team and I are actually in this trade, selling it back down into these levels. We actually took our trade where I think it was 109.60. Is what? Right up here. Somewhere in this area. I don't remember exactly where it was. Let me see if anybody's on the call here. I don't know about Frost, if you can just look and tell me, but it really doesn't matter. But anyway, I know that we took a trade up in these levels and we're pretty much targeting this low down here. This area, the 109.18, 109.20, that's the first target point that we'll be looking at. Second target point is actually the 108.90. And this entire zone is an area that we must be paying a close attention to. Right? I know it's a wide zone, but this level is actually a liquidity zone out of the market, and it's not that much. That's just about a 30 pip move out of the market. So I'm actually anticipating for once the market approach this area to get some form of consolidation before making another push to the upside. All right, so that's what I would actually be looking at out of the market. All right, so the first target point out of this is in this overall zone. There you have it, perhaps 109.60. Yes, so that's our entry. It wasn't bad. All right, so that's what we'll be looking at. So assess the market as it approach in this entire area. All right, and then from there, you can look to take your trade back to the highs. All right, and I said we'll be targeting the 111. USD Swiss, now this is one of them that completely blew out of the water. Again, heavily impacted by the weak data that came out of the dollar. We got some movements out of the market, but ultimately the market simply fell off. Price action simply fell off. Now, what are the levels we should be looking at now? Let's just clear this. Let's take a quick look. Market is in an overall uptrend. What was the last push higher? Boom, came from here. Close, boom, here. And this is an anchor. And this becomes an area to watch. No, we may not get price all the way down there. This is your target zone. And that's a 97.60. That's the area that you want to be looking at in terms of price action. And I'll just put that entire zone to be from this pivot point now where market is. And that's why you find the price is actually pushing a bit higher now, based on the fact that the market is within these two pivot points, this here and this one down here. And I simply highlighted the close at this stage. But this isn't too bad. It's what, another 30, 35 pip. So ultimately, we want to see price pushing higher. If you look at structure out of the market, you can see a nice falling wedge coming into play. So a nice falling wedge coming in play at this stage. And if we highlight them, one, two, where's that one? Where's that? 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 5. Let's just look back, trying to give you, for this one now, actually looking to give you guys a pinpoint level. And look to see the market approach this area before ultimately breaking out to the upside. So your target point is actually back in resistance, but your first level that you want to be looking at is actually right here. Right, so if you want to look at this market here, assess to see if you get the close. If the market, a rejection out of this area would definitely give you a strong bias to the upside. Or if you want a more conservative approach out of the market, just simply assess this level right here for the breakout. That's 98.16. So this area becomes your breakout level. And you want to be looking at this area for any form of rejection out of the market, right? So ultimately, this looks long. And from what you're seeing here, you can pretty much see that we're anticipating strength out of the US dollar. Again, we're looking for the market to approach in these levels. And again, we saw price pushing higher. Now, if I remember clearly, I'll generally utilize these as key areas for us to be looking at. And in 2 weeks, since the 5th of December, when we did this scan, the market did what? In 17 days, or in 13 days, 2 full trading week, and the market literally moved about 100 pip. That's not, so you can realize now that this in itself is just a pretty slow pair, or it moves pretty slowly across the over the past 2 weeks, simply because the dollar in itself rallied a bit, and even though you had the New Zealand dollar picking up some amount of strength, there was no real significant movements out of the market for this pair. And the fact that we did not get any close above this area, I would simply be targeting at least this support zone right here. That's the level that I would be targeting. The fact that I didn't get any form of close above this area, every time price push into 66, we get major rejection, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 straight days we failed to breach this level. So in it, what it is indicating now, and this is not rocket science, is that price is failing to push higher. So if price is failing to push higher, then ultimately we should be looking to sell. So where would you be looking to sell? And this now would be what? Right back out of these highs. Now what the level that you should be looking at anywhere in these areas would be your ideal level. What's your breakout level? Right at this pivot low. because this now would be a confirmed trend out of the market. All right, so this is the area that I would actually be looking at. Aussie USD, and now this don't look bad in terms of movement. This is really surprising even for the Aussie USD, which is pretty much a snail when it comes to market movements. Now I was looking at this area, but ultimately looking to see the market push down lower. Let's just clear this up a bit. Go back to the daily. All right, from what we can see now, all of this entire movement here is just what? A correction of this impulsive move. So immediately we can see the market is in a downtrend. We made this overall impulsive move, and all of this now is pure correction out of the market. Pure correction out of the market. So what should we be looking at now? Let's just see exactly where this lie. Not bad. And we're right back in that 61 level. Let's just assess the weekly. Pushing. Not bad. Nice little channel here. Nice little trend channel. Just might get a little bit more to the upside. For this, I wouldn't be so sure in terms of where the market is likely to push to the upside, but ultimately we should be targeting these lows. This overall area on here. Right, so this is the area that you want to be looking at. This becomes your target zone out of the market. Let's see where the 4-hour looks. In terms of giving you a full target from the market now, this becomes key resistance level. Didn't see it on the daily, but it's very clear now on the 4-hour. All right, so you want to be looking for the market up there and then target these lows. Right, so ultimately this becomes your target area for price. And if you look at the market now out of its overall movement, you can see here giving you a nice classic head and shoulder pattern. So if you see the price come back in this area and fail to close above, look for a strong breakout to the downside. This is a pretty good head and shoulder pattern out of the market. Not the cleanest, but it is still classified as a head and shoulder pattern. Impulse correction into this area. What you find is that the neckline is also acting as the trend line with the base of that shoulder, the base of that first impulsive move. So that's ultimately what you want to be looking at. So let's just target this zone, 68.93, and then from there, you're looking to send the market lower. Right, and gold, again, I'm still targeting 1430. Now this is also a pair that we trade on a regular basis with the team. So I don't need to go too much in terms of assessing the market, in terms of looking back to give an overall analysis on it. I can tell you from now that I would be looking to see price make an attempt of these highs. We need to find price back in this area, and then from here we can simply target the 1430. So I'd still be holding my bias down there, right? And I'm giving you that level simply because it's a long-term play that I am holding on to in terms of my short bias. All indications of the market is giving me confirmation or weight of evidence to say that price should be approaching that area. But if we should be looking at an immediate target, a little bit more conservative, you can look back for price in the 1460 area, that overall zone. All right, so that's the level that you want to be looking at. All right, so there you would have it in terms of all the major pairs, from Euro USD finishing off with gold. What we generally do for those who are new is that if you have a pair that you would like me to look at, you can simply post it in the chat box and I'll just do a quick analysis of that for you, right? In general, if you do what I would also advise for future is just to send them in ahead of time, so we can move through them a bit faster, right, as we do these scans on a weekly basis. Right, so to do a quick recap of everything in terms of target levels for Euro USD, I'm saying that we want to see price push back a little bit higher, but ultimately the level that you want to be looking at is 111.07. If price gets beneath that area, then we should be targeting the 0995 zone. That's ultimately where we want to see price heading, and that's all a part of the larger move to find consolidation in price back down in the 108 zone. Right, so that's pretty much what we'll be looking at for Euro USD. So Euro USD short, Pound USD short as well. However, we want to see price where back in 132. So I would be anticipating for the market to approach that 132 area. In fact, I had a trade set up for this earlier today, and I think it simply missed my entry by less than 5 pips. And I'm actually looking to buy that. I'm not rushing the trade either. I'm simply holding out and wait for the market to reset or to find back my overall entry level. Right, but I have a trade set up for Euro USD as well, waiting on the market to meet my confirmations to take the trade back in these highs. USD CAD, want to see what? Some form of movement down here to find the market into support in that 130 zone. We're not too far away from that area, but that's the level that we want, that we would be looking at ideally for the market to approach. The level that you want to be looking at in terms of your key level is 131.30. If price pushes and close above that area, then we can ultimately target the highs of the 132, right? Immediately we can start looking for price up there. However, and ideally, you would want to see the market come down into these lows first before ultimately making the push to the upside. USD JPY, Again, this market has simply been just stagnant. Still looking for price to find its way back in the 109 area. Ultimately, I would be watching the 109.80. If price gets above 109.80, then I would be looking for the market to push back into the 110, 111 zone. In terms of 110.90, 111, that's the area that we'd be looking at in terms of price action. And simply because the market has an imbalance in that level, and we need to find the market back in that overall zone. Right? So based on where we are now, we're pretty much in a liquidity zone for the market. So I wouldn't, if I see price in this area, we might get some form of consolidation in and around these zones first before the market push higher. So that's what I would be looking at. For USD Swiss, again, we want to see price where? Back in these support zones to get a high probability trade to finish off this rising wedge, falling wedge, I should say, sorry, and then making its way back to these highs. Ultimately, you want to be targeting the top of this level, right up there. All right, but expect the market to give you some form of hold up in this area. But ideally, let's just put it right up to the top there. That's where you want to be targeting. NZD USD back down in the lows. Area to watch, this daily support zone, 6602. That's the level that you want to be looking at. And target area for price is in the 6480s in that overall area. Aussie USD, same target area, 6758, 6760. That's the overall zone that you want to be looking at. Watch what price does in this area, 6893. Watch and see what price does in that area. A failed close of that zone would confirm that we have a head and shoulder pattern on the 4-hour time frame, and we could easily see the market reject and to give you strong movement to the downside here. And finishing off with gold, I would be looking to see the market push into the 1484 area before closing off at your first target level, 1460, and ultimately for the market to find its way down in the 1430 level. Another area to watch in terms of price, and let me just highlight this for you guys, is this little zone right here, 1470, 1471. If price pushes beneath that level, we can look to see the market continue to come down into the 1460. All right, let's see the pair we have here. Okay, pound CAD. A quick look at that. Okay, I don't remember who had asked me to look at this from, but then I was looking for the price to come in this area to push higher. Didn't get that movement at all out of pound CAD, as at least to the downside, but we did in fact get the price to go all the way up there. So from this point, I would still be holding true for the market to hit this 169 level, right? So that's the area that you want to be watching, that 169 zone. But I would ideally want to see the price come in this area first. So I'd want to see some form of bullish movement out of this first before taking the trade to the downside here. And I'm simply highlighting this area now because the market simply hit that overall zone. Right, so I would want to see price here and then to target these lows. Let's just have a quick look at the daily time frame. This is interesting. This is a anchor right there. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so that wasn't a real swing out of the market. Wasn't a pivot swing. So it might very well not respect this area. This is a zone that you want to be watching. 170. Watch to see what price does here. If we get the push down, could easily find the market, make an even push a bit higher than here and come back up into this area. This is a very interesting one. Could easily find price push here. Let's see exactly how far that is. Oh, that's a 200 pip move. That means we could easily get that swing from down in this low here. This is what I would actually be looking at. And this area becomes that key zone for you to be watching now. Let's just delete this. Even before you target the 169 or in this low, which is what? 150 pip move down. Watch to see what the price does here. This level right here. Watch to see exactly what price does. And we're approaching that area now. It's a pretty interesting area for price right now. All right, the market didn't give you a key swing there on the weekly, but you have it on the 4 hour and also on the 1 hour. Not the 1 hour, the daily as well. And there you have it. The EMA is pretty much in that same zone as well. 170, yeah. And there you have it. Let's move this. On the EMA, they're exactly there, so. Yeah, so just be careful with this one. Watch to see exactly what price does as it approaches this area. Watch to see what it does in this overall zone. And then you could possibly be looking for the market to push higher. All right. Pound NZD and Pound AUD. Yes, you guys really love the pound pairs, eh? A lot of movements out of the market from the last time I did this analysis though. Okay. On NZD is in a real sweet spot. I don't know why I haven't looked at this all week, simply because it is one of the pairs that I trade. Target area, at least a 195. This zone you want to be watching. It's a very interesting pair too. As I can say, the pound pairs are very, very interesting. And as I can, most of them pound NZD. Just notice what's happening. Out of all the pairs that we see all the movements out of on that Brexit push or that news out of England, we didn't find any major movement out of the pound, out of pound NZD. Let's see who had asked me to look at that pair. Ariane. Well, all the pairs pay in a mark. All the pairs pay. Every single one of them. It's all about trusting in your analysis and just allow the market to move. But Ryan, I'll look at this one for you in detail, and I'll try and see if I can send an entry for you later on. All right, but if I don't get to do it, just remind me in the session in the morning, and I'll just look at it in details and see if I can give you a solid entry on it. But ideally, this pair looks short back down into these levels. But with the fact that we just took a trade on Euro NZD, anticipating weakness out of the New Zealand dollar, I'd want to see some form of movement back to the upside, at least in this area. Let us look at the 4-hour. Yep. And there you have it. This little wick right here. Indication to me now that we should be targeting this high. So look to target here, that $2 zone. Not even as high as the 111. That $2 zone looks good. Let's assess this here. This little swing. And just remember this area. So right now you have the box in which to work with right now. This entire zone is your baby to work with. All right. So based on what, let's see, I would anticipate price to make its way back in this area before ultimately pushing lower. So I wouldn't be calling this to the downside just yet. Want to see what price does up in this area, as we can easily stay from here and we can make another attempt at this high. Can easily make another attempt at this high. So you want to watch and see what the market is doing as it approaches this area, the $2 level, and then ultimately we can look at the 163. All right, but your first target is trying to see if you can get an entry up in this area. All right, and you can already see an entry point coming up. So if you utilize what we look at, you can definitely find your entry right there. Market is pretty obvious for us right now. Pound, what's that other one? Pound AUD. All right, that's the last one. All right, pound AUD. No problem, Mark. Welcome, bro. Oh, this one actually give us some nice little movements though. And again, this pair looks low. As you can see, all the pound pairs them now is actually looking for retracement, and it's very easy to call the pound pairs now, simply because we've been coming off of that large bullish run based on the news release, based on the election, right? So most of these movements that you see out of the market now, especially this long wick red candle here on the weekly time frame, all of this candle here, no, this is all profit taking, right? This is all profit taking. So what you want to be looking at now, again, that's why you find I said that I'm not looking to be buying any, to be selling any of the pound pairs just now in terms of jumping into a sell, because the market is pretty much doing an overall profit taking now. So I would be looking to see the price push a bit higher before pushing lower. So ultimately you want to be targeting these lows, but you definitely need to see price back in these highs a bit first. So you would ideally, the best thing I would say to do is try to get any buys out of these lows. This entire zone, look to see what price does in this entire area. It's hard to really pinpoint a level, right? But look to see what price does in this entire area and target back the highs. If the market breaks this zone, breaks that low, 188 or 189, then now you can look to send the market lower. You can look for shorts out of the market back down in the 186. But until that happens, we should be looking for the price to push back higher, because all of this movement that we're seeing out of the market now is pretty much pure profit taking. This large impulsive move followed by that large correction, all profit taking. So assess the market to push back a little bit higher before finishing off to the downside. All right, so I can't really go into too much details in terms of why I'm suggesting that, but just assess the market as it approaches that overall area. No problem, Crystal, you're welcome. All right, so we're leaving it there for this week. Thank you guys again for your listening ear, and I'll post this. Once this has been downloaded, I'll upload it to YouTube and I'll send the link out in a group for you guys to pretty much have a look at. Remember that in trading, it's always our job as traders is simply to try and react to the market's movement and not to predict. So ensure that whatever strategy that you're using, you simply wait for the market to meet your trading conditions, meet your entry requirements. And if you don't have an entry requirement already, you need to get one before you open another trade, because you need to have set conditions in terms of how you execute each trade in the market. Know your entry requirements and also know your exit requirements as well. How are you going to exit your trade? Are you going to exit that trade in a loss? Or how are you going to exit that trade if you're in a loss? How are you exiting that trade if you're in profit? Right? So these are the things that will ultimately differentiate everybody in terms of winners or losers out of trading. All right. So trade safe, guys. Always remember that. Protect your capital at all costs. All right. And we'll see you guys again next week for the next live market scan. Good night.